she'd had trouble in her legs, and his name was Josh Lepper. They prayed for her, and he's like, how do you feel? And immediately she's like, well, I feel pretty good. And then on one leg, she did a squat to the ground and back up, and she's like, wow, that's amazing.
Oh, really?
And Josh Lepper was praying for another person who'd been having trouble with their thumb. And they had hands like he was holding the hand in his hand, and they were praying. And as they were praying, both of them felt a shift, and they kind of stopped praying, looked up, and like, did you feel that? And they're like, yeah, I felt that. Well, how do you feel? So I'm trying to step out in faith and say, well, we just prayed. Well, how do you feel like, right now? To expect that.
Okay.
Knock, knock, knock. Because, okay, so the same yesterday, today, and forever. The God who was, who is, and is to come. We all about yesterday. Yes, parted the Red Sea. Yes, Jesus. Yes, was for the nation of Israel. Or we think about, tomorrow, Jesus is coming back again. Yes, tomorrow, heaven. But if we're going to be, comprehensive Christians, we don't just believe for yesterday and we don't just believe for tomorrow. We believe for today. So that's what we want to do. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Mary's my timekeeper today because our battery is still dead up there. So wave at me when we get close.
What time do you put the flag?
How about 9:35?
Okay.
I want to thank you, and you're going to have to forgive me. So, looking at this spreadsheet, this shows all the weeks that we've been here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, can you believe this already? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. At least 12 weeks in a row, I've been here doing this teaching already, if you can believe it. This is a quarter of a year. This is 3 months, if you can believe it. So, and when I walked through the door and I was praying over the first session, this is where you might forgive me, is I came through the door with a theme, and we're still in that theme. We kind of skirted in and out a few times, but I think there's more for us here. We're going to keep mining in this gold mine until we get all the gold. Mm-hmm. So what's that theme?
Grow in the knowledge of God.
Grow in the knowledge of God. And we're going to do a little bit of review here, but I got something new for you. So, and I didn't have time this morning. You can maybe see my little tiny images on the paper. But I wanted to get you a piece of paper. And I actually wanted to do more than that. These are icons of the themes that we've gone through. Why do we grow in the knowledge of God? First, let me back up. First off, what is knowledge? Information.
What we know.
Knowledge is what we know. It's information. When you have knowledge, if you know what to do with that knowledge, we'll call that wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you receive knowledge from somebody and you get to a point where you understand it, we'll call that understanding. They're all related. Wisdom, knowledge, understanding. A few weeks ago, we talked about what happens when you grow in knowledge. And I want to add to this one. So when we grow in knowledge, there were 3 things that we also grow in. I talked about that flower. I talked about that painting tool. And here's a new one for you. Imagine, if you would, like Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best. You've got the dad who works outside the house. You got the mom who works inside the home. The traditional 1950s American family. What do you think would happen to the father, or inside the father, if one day she went off shopping with the ladies and he stayed home and took care of the kids? What do you think would happen inside the father?
I don't know. I know James Dobson did that. He traded his wife back the next day. Mm-hmm. He tried to do that.
So what would the father be doing that the wife would normally be doing?
He be doing the housework and the cooking.
Housework, cooking,
He would miss her.
miss her. I'm thinking diapers.
Everything.
Do kids ever complain?
He'd be feeding them.
He'd be feeding them.
Yeah.
Dealing with these kids, do they ever fight?
Yeah.
He has to
Oh, gosh.
break up a fight,
Holding them, walking around crying.
punish, discipline, yeah, console them.
He realized what a job his wife had.
Exactly. So one of the way when we grow in, he would be growing in knowledge of what his wife does, and when he grows in the knowledge of what she does, he would really start to appreciate her.
Respect her.
Yeah. Especially
So-
when it comes to changing diapers.
Uh-huh.
I did that yesterday. Yesterday I had the baby, and BJ was gone. And I tried to call her, and she wouldn't answer. And I called Pam and her sister. I said, "Is BJ up there?" "No." I said, "Pam." I said, "I didn't change the wet diaper." I said, "This baby's been pooped." And I said, I don't want to do it. I want BJ to be here." But she said, "She's not here. I'm sorry." So I went on and changed it.
It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. I've changed them anyway. It wasn't that bad, but I was just joking with them. But in a way I was hoping she wouldn't come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we grow in knowledge, we grow in appreciation, and we grow in knowledge. And we talked about the power tools. We can talk about those again. We talked about the big heavy equipment. And we even talked about simple things like honey. That honey, if you give it to babies under 1 year old, they say it's hard to swallow. They could choke. They could die. So you learn about products. You learn about power tools. You grow in respect for them. It's not a toy. It's not just candy and sweet. It could be deadly. So we grow in respect. When you grow in knowledge, you grow in respect. And then the other one, well, I guess that was the flower. We talked about the flower that blooms one night out of the year, usually a full moon. It's in the desert, has to be a certain altitude, sets off this fragrance, and it lasts only one day. And you're like, wow, that's incredible. We grow in knowledge, we grow in wonder and awe. And we had a few examples that was in the Bible of where you see this happening. You don't have to turn there. I'll just read this to you. But if you did want to turn, it's John chapter 7, verse 16. And here's the situation. Jesus is coming into, let's see, maybe he's going to, well, I thought it had the name of the city. Anyway, he's coming in, and there's a funeral procession which is going out of the town. He's coming in with his disciples and a large crowd with him and behind him. And there's a large crowd that's coming out of the town, and everybody is weeping and crying. Because what does it say in the Bible? As he approached the gate of the city, a dead man was being carried out, and the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a sizable crowd from the city was with her. This is Luke chapter 7, verse 13.
Luke?
Luke.
You said John.
I meant Luke, I'm sorry.
Oh. Luke 7.
Luke 7.
Luke. Luke 7. I read John. I thought, that ain't it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Luke 7:16.
Yeah, we're in 7:13.
Right.
Got a joke with my wife. I tell her, I don't ever want you to correct me in public or in private. And she just corrected me in public. So we're going to have a conversation after church. And she responded to me. She said, well, if you don't want me to correct you, then don't ever be wrong. So.
Whoa, that's good.
Yeah.
So he's the only, this is Luke 7. He's the only son of his mother. She was a widow. Sizable crowd from the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, don't you just love Jesus? When the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her and said to her, do not weep. And he came up and touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt. And he said, young man, I say to you, arise. The dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. And here's the next line, verse 16. Fear gripped them all, and they began glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people. So imagine that you're there with the crowd. Imagine that you're with the crowd that came with Jesus, Maybe you've already seen some things. He healed the centurion's servant right before this. He healed a leper and a paralytic. So you know some things about Jesus. Or imagine that you're in the crowd with the mother and you're coming out and you're weeping, and Jesus comes up and he stops the parade. So you might know a little bit about Jesus, you might know nothing about Jesus. But after this event, everybody knew something else about Jesus. They grew in knowledge. Who is this? This is a great prophet. God has visited us. He just raised this man from the dead. And so when we grow in knowledge, we grow in appreciation. We grow in wonder. And when you appreciate something, you praise it. When you grow in wonder, you glorify it. And we also grow in respect. And when you grow in respect, you fear it. There's a healthy fear. You have a healthy fear. So here in this encounter, we see in verse 16, when Jesus raised him, gave him back to his mother, fear gripped them all. Fear is a very healthy respect. And they began to glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has risen among us. They glorified God. This is your wonder. This is your astonishment. This is your appreciation. So they grew in knowledge. And how did it overflow? When their knowledge increased, they were fearful of Jesus and they glorified God. That's your natural response to growing in knowledge. However, this is something new this week. What kind of knowledge would you say this was? Let's go back to the garden for a second. Don't you eat of that fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? What kind of those two classifications? What kind of knowledge is this? It's good. God has power. Jesus has compassion. He can raise the dead. This is amazing. This is wonderful. This is good knowledge. But there's the knowledge of good and evil. And as I was thinking about this week, I was like, well, when we grow in knowledge, we don't always grow in appreciation and respect and wonder. Basically, when we grow in knowledge, I thought, we kind of grow in disgust. And we might also grow in fear, but of a different kind of fear. So imagine that you're at home and you're watching the nightly news. What did we say knowledge was?
Information.
Knowledge is information. What is the nightly news?
Information.
That's a bunch of information. Is it good? It's garbage. It's also, what is a lot of the news? Bad news. Evil news. This person did this horrible thing to that person. This person is missing. They just found this dead person. That person killed that person. He's in prison. She cheated on her taxes. She's a corrupt mayor. And we're growing in all this knowledge. And how do we feel after we watch the evening news? We might hear things of, well, this country is rising up and they've got technology that can blow our satellites out of the sky. Or this country is smuggling this into this other country, whether it's people in sex trafficking or whether it's weapons. We're growing in a bunch of knowledge that we kind of wish we didn't know. Ignorance is bliss. Innocence is probably bliss too. So when we grow in knowledge, we don't always grow in appreciation or respect or wonder. We grow in disgust and fear of a bad kind. Well, now I'm afraid of rockets and missiles. North Korea's testing one. They could probably send one to Los Angeles now. They're trying to work on one to get to New York or DC or whatever. And if it's not that, then somebody's manufacturing, they're messing with viruses for some reason. And if it's not that, then it's these people who are putting this stuff on our food. Or they're doing stuff with the food and telling us this is food when it's not food. Who do you trust? Where do you go? Fear can creep in with knowledge of evil or with bad knowledge. And where do we see this in the Bible? It's Ephesians chapter 5. Knowledge of evil, bad knowledge. We don't even want to grow in that stuff. And here's what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, starting in verse 3. Paul says, "But immorality or any impurity or greed must not even be named among you, as is proper among the saints. And there must be no filthiness and silly talk or coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving thanks. For this you know with certainty, that no immoral or impure person or covetous man who is an idolater has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not be partakers with them." This is Ephesians 5, verse 8. "For you were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth, trying to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. For it is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret." It is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret. There's knowledge out there that we wish we didn't have. Did any of you go watch that movie recently, Sound of Freedom? Sound of Freedom. You will grow in knowledge of, even the opening credits of this movie, they were showing real footage from security cameras in subways all around the world where people were stealing children from people. There was one where the lady was sleeping there in the subway with her child sleeping next to her, which is bad enough anyway that she doesn't have a home. And someone came up and snuck up while her back was turned to her child and took the child from the cot that they were lying on. And God only knows where that child is today. It didn't look like doctored up fake stuff. It looked like real footage of what is happening in the world.
They say it's worse than drugs.
Yeah.
As far as money making, and it's terrible.
So we grow in knowledge. I wish I hadn't, stuff like that. I wish I hadn't seen that. I wish I didn't know that. I wish that I didn't know that that existed. Because what we have here that he says, "For the fruit of light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth." That is what we want. We want paradise, heaven on earth. Lord, in your mercy, come, Lord Jesus. The
What
bride.
verse is that?
Huh?
I'm sorry. What verse are you reading?
So what I just told you, goodness, righteousness, and truth, that was Ephesians 5:9. And Ephesians 5:12 is where he says it's disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret.
Thank you.
So when we grow in knowledge, yes, we do grow in appreciation and respect and wonder and fear and awe and astonishment, and it overflows into praise of good stuff. But when we grow in knowledge of evil, wicked, bad, twisted stuff, we don't grow in those things. We might grow in fear that it will happen to us or people that we know or to our country. We probably should be a little bit more fearful. There's a list of things in Romans chapter 1. There's another list of things here in 2 Timothy 3. Let's not get into them. You can look them up on your own time. Not that I'm... okay, yeah, on your own. This is our time all together. It's not just my time and your time. But we're running out of time for this morning. But you could look those up. Big, long lists of things we wish we hadn't known. But here's the thing. I'm in seminary. I'm taking a Greek class right now, which usually school is pretty easy for me, but I'm having trouble in this class. I just took a test yesterday. I did okay, but some of it I'm a good guesser, and I don't know what's going on. You know, you can still get the answer right on a multiple choice test, even when you have no idea what's happening. But let me tell you a Greek word that I like. I like the sound of it, and you could even repeat it after me. There's a Greek word called Euangelion. Euangelion. This is a word that means gospel. And gospel means good news. It means it's straight up good news. Euangelion, you can translate that as good news or you can translate that as gospel. And both of them are just fine. So we get information in our nightly evening news. And it might be bad knowledge or knowledge of evil. And we walk away and say, man, is there any good news? That's a bunch of bad news. Is there any good news? And I think maybe when we talk about good news, we might say, we say good really quickly and we land on the news. We focus on the news and we forget about it being good. So let's just lean on the word good for a little bit. Say, there's good news. I don't just have news for you. I have good news. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 21 says, do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been, I'd have to look it up, explained to you from the beginning? Have you not known from the foundations of the earth? It is He, God, who sits above the foundation of the earth. Let me find it so I can actually read it to you. You're all familiar with how this passage ends, if you've been in church for any time, because it talks about getting new strength, soaring up on wings like eagles. But here's how it begins, or it's in the middle. Do you not know? This is Isaiah 40, chapter 40, verse 21. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is He who sits above the circle of the earth. And get this. And its inhabitants, which is us, are like grasshoppers. The way that we look at the ants and we think, oh, aren't they nice? They've got their little colony. They've got their little farm. They're walking around carrying their little pieces of food. Aren't they cute? That's what we look like to the Lord. It is He who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain. How easy is it for us to stretch out a curtain? Any of us could move that curtain off that window right now and just... Who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He it is who reduces rulers to nothing. He can squish the bugs. We hear about a bunch of rulers on the nightly evening news, people growing in power. Well, is there anyone who can stop them? And the Bible says that He it is who reduces rulers to nothing, who makes the judges of the earth meaningless. Scarcely have they been planted, scarcely have they been sown, scarcely has their stock taken root in the earth, but He merely blows on them and they wither, and the storm carries them away like stubble. This is God speaking. To whom then will you liken me, that I would be His equal? Says the Holy One. Now to you, lift up your eyes on high and see who created these stars. The one who leads forth their number the one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? This is good news. The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is inscrutable. He gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. What is the antidote to the bad news? We've got 24-hour news cycles. You can go onto a news channel and watch a steady stream of bad news all day long. What is the antidote to this bad news? Good news. And this is some good news. There's someone who's bigger. I tell Mary this all the time over breakfast. Because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, even God's muscles have muscles. There's cartoons where they flex their bicep and it pops up, and the bicep pops up, and then you got to pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
His muscles have muscles. His greatness, because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. And this is the God that appears to us, who gives Jesus to us, who gives the Holy Spirit to us, who comes to us, God with us, Emmanuel, who talks to us, who has compassion on us, who loves us. What is man that you're mindful of him? We're just a bunch of ants in comparison to you. We're just a bunch of grasshoppers in comparison to you. What is man that you are mindful of him? And God says, I fashioned you, I created you, I formed you, you're mine. I made you for my pleasure. I made you to share myself with you. I want to know you. I want you to know me. This is some good news, don't you think?
It's about 9:42, brother.
Thank you. I'd been getting the...
Oh, hey, all right, sure, okay.
So, we grow in knowledge. If it's good knowledge, we grow in good things. If it's bad knowledge, we grow in bad things. If it's bad knowledge, it's bad news. What's the antidote? It's good news. Euangelion.
Don't you feel so much better when you watch a good Christian program and they present the good news, and you turn it over and watch the news and you say, oh man, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
No matter what channel it's on, it's a bummer with what's going on today with the Democrats and the Republicans, and it's just a bummer. Our country's going to pot if things don't change. It really is.
And the church needs it. It's the church's responsibility to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that song you
Yeah.
sing from Hee Haw or whatever?
Gloom, despair, and agony on me.
Yeah.
The whole thing?
Something like, yeah.
Yeah.
Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all.
So bad luck is what that is. Gloom, despair, and agony. That's bad luck. That's bad news. But we have good news. We've got good news. We've got good news.
Junior Samples was selling cars back then. Bill of 5 for
Yeah.
Well, let's head on upstairs and hear more about this good news and praise God for the good news. Welcome.